Today we're at Gentiana Nursery and we're looking at dividing hostas. Here's the clump that we're dividing, and it's over to Craig Wilson to tell us how to do it.
Well, first of all, hostas quite like being pot bound. So for the home gardener, it's not something that you have to do very often. Having said that, if you're not splitting them up, you need to feed them and water them.
So how old would this clump be here?
I reckon it'd be 3 or 4 years since I split that up.
Okay, so it's well and truly ready for it by the look of it.
Yeah, but you could leave it. As long as you can get water into it and liquid fertiliser, they're fine.
Okay, so
if they're not getting that, then the leaves will start getting small and they'll lose their colour.
So what are we using?
Japanese perennial knife or gardening knife.
Okay, that's serrated on one edge.
That's right.
Yep.
Fork.
Yep.
Snips.
Okay.
You can use secateurs for chopping up the crowns, but the snips are much finer, so you don't do so much damage.
All right, let's rip into it.
What I'll do, here I divide them up for the nursery, obviously, so I'm putting them in little pots, but I'll just do this one like what I would do if I wasn't selling any. But there's a temptation to use the old potting mix, and I don't, because I think it has too many fines in it, and it clogs up the drainage. And if you do want to reuse it, then you should dry it out first.
So with the old potting mix, I mean, it does degrade, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it breaks down and it's full of fines and it loses its draining capacity. So, but if you dried it out and if you could be bothered, you sieved it, it would be fine. So this hosta is called Wide Brim. It's quite a big one. And I keep them all in black plastic pots. And the reason I do that is because they're just so much lighter and easier to manage. And if you want to show them off, then you can just drop the plastic pot into a nice pot. And then in the winter, you can take them out and chuck them under a tree somewhere and put some tulips into the pot.
I'm guessing that in this clump, there's going to be quite a few sort of crowns.
Yeah, look, if you're potting it just for home, then I'd be inclined just to cut this into 4 or 6 pieces and put it back into the pot, because I'll show you that.
Yep. So you're not tempted to get the hose and hose all the soil off?
Don't really need to. If it wasn't such a vigorous clump, I'd be a bit more careful with it. I don't think we're going to have a shortage here. You can see in here, there's the crown there, there's another one there, there's more in there. That's as far as it extends out. When you're repotting them, part of the process is getting rid of the old potting mix.
Yep.
From in here, from right in under the plant. So that's why I'm stripping them and teasing them out. Changing potting mix is important, I think.
So if you didn't have a Japanese knife, you could use a bread knife or something similar?
Yeah, it's got a strong bread knife.
That's
This one's fantastic.
And they're available
Online, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if this was a plant which I was just growing for myself, then that would be the limit of the dividing that I would do. And the reason I like to chop them up is A, that you can distribute them around the pot so that when you get a much, much fuller pot of leaves, yeah, and B, you create more space for the growing crown.
Okay, so you're going to get more.
You're going to get more plants.
Yep. So we're going to into a reasonably large size pot.
Yep.
And where do we go from here?
Put some potting mix in.
And a good quality potting mix.
Yep. Yep, you can afford.
So would this have a lot of coir in it or not?
No. It's mostly fine, I think.
Right, so not a lot of coir. Yeah.
I like coir.
A lot of people are saying that they don't now.
Yeah, never had. Then peat moss I don't like because it's not sustainable. Not too much potting mix in the bottom and in the pot. Yeah?
Yep.
To start off with, because you build it up.
So only about a third full.
You get the roots right down to the bottom of the pot. We get this one propped up that way. Yeah. This way. They're not against the edge of the pot and not against each other. You sort of pack them out with potting mix.
So the edge of the pots just gets too hot?
I think if you get the sun on the pot
Yep.
at any time of the day and they're black, it's not that good.
And the space between them is just giving them room to grow.
Room to grow, exactly. To make those new crowns if you want. And look, I like to get the pot as full of roots as quickly as possible, because a pot that's full of roots dries out evenly. Whereas a pot that's not full of roots, you have wet patches and dry patches.
So when you're transplanting these things and cutting them up, you need to keep as much of the root system intact as you possibly can.
How's that?
Yep.
Yeah. And then you make a bit of with your hand, get in and get the roots right down. And, you know, in 3 months, this pot will probably be full of roots. Can you see that? So we'll grab them and get the roots like that. And then get them right down to the bottom of the pot. And if they hit the bottom and they haven't got anywhere else to go, they'll just turn around and come back up again.
So although we've gone up a pot size, we haven't quite got them all in because we need a bit of space for them to grow. Is that correct?
Yep. That one you give to your neighbour, or in my case, chop it up and sell it. And I always do them at the right at the beginning of spring, early to mid-spring.
Okay.
Because the growing crowns are visible, so it's easy to chop them up. And the other reason is that they just can't start growing straight away. So that damage that I did to the crown was going to cover up very quickly.
So you really need to wait until the weather starts.
Until they're moving.
Yeah. When they, when it warms up a little bit and they're starting to grow.
You'll know if you've grown them for a little while. Once you've grown them for a little while, you'll know where they're moving. Because the crowns start showing through.
So with these, the crowns are going to be a little bit below the surface?
Just. Yeah. And, you know, they'll push themselves up a little bit.
They'll find their own level.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there you go. That's Wide Brim.
So what about fertiliser and...
Look, if it was a home collection and I only had a few, I'd use Osmocote. But this is cheaper. For doing well. And then once they start growing, you can liquid feed them every time you water them.
And what would you use? That something like a power feed or
that's right.
the fish
whatever, sea salt, power feed,
fish fertiliser?
Charlie cow.
Yep.
Yeah, fish emulsion, doesn't matter.
So water these in well?
Yep. Man, that's got liquid food in it.
Keep these in the shade for a while?
Well, they're shade plants.
Yep. And they should be showing good signs of growth in...
Very soon.
Yep.
Just over there, you see. Once they're done ending in the week.
Okay, so they're already popping up.
Yeah.
So this is the one we've got left over.
Yeah. This is for division for the nursery.
So you're stripping that right down to...
This is where these come to play. You see? Nice and fine.
So it's really just one shoot on each.
You have to be careful because growing these things takes a great deal of time.
Yes.
And it's easy to sell too much.
Yep.
And not be left with any for next year or subsequent years. You know, a plant like that one I've had for 20 years.
Yes.
And, you know, I can take maybe 10 divisions off it a year maximum. That might be pushing it. But if you don't have to do it, don't. Because they look great if they're left alone. You know, in many big clumps. So as long as you get some root on them, they're good. So these ones I will shorten the roots.
Because they're going into smaller pots?
Into these pots, which is ridiculous small, but it's just for mailing.
Yep.
And so, you know, by the end of spring, the person who's bought these will have to move them into a bigger pot. But for the mail out, they're good. So if you have something like that, yeah, it's a silly American legs.
But you've still got a good amount on there. Yeah. So if we're talking about basic hosta care...
If you give them 3 hours of sun in the morning, then you get a better leaf colour. But nothing after that. I would say nothing after 11 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
And watering?
Watering when they're dry.
Okay. What about drip irrigation systems?
No.
Provide too much water?
Yeah, it's not gauging the moisture in your pot. It's just watering willy-nilly. I mean, it's okay if you're going on holiday for a week.
Yep.
or 2 weeks even, that's fine. But yeah, no, I don't do drip irrigation on anything. I mean, with pots, it's important to allow them to dry out between watering. So that the potting mix can breathe. If it's full of water all the time, then it gets clogged up and the roots can't breathe.
And once you've got them growing in the pot, how often would you put your Osmocote or...
You do the Osmocote, whatever it is, once every 3 months or 6 months, but then I'd liquid feed them all the time. All summer. Foliage and potting mix.
And snails?
You can get copper tape to put around the pots.
And how do you find that?
It works for a little while. It's pretty cheap copper tape, so
you might need to renew that if you're using it.
yeah. And I recommend, in Australia anyway, that people grow them in pots.
How many varieties of hosta are you've got in your collection?
70, which is a tiny.
It's a lot, but it's only a few.
Yeah. There is hundreds of them.
We might come back and have a look at some of the hostas when they're in their full leaf and beauty, and have a look at some of the varieties that you've got in your collection.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel for regular updates on a whole range of gardening matters, and as always, good luck with your gardening.